Task Force Bourbon here. Welcome to the channel. I had this experience a little bit of technical difficulty, but we're going to go ahead and rehash. Essentially, what we got going on tonight is a French oak blind flight fight with the premium end of those expressions. Really, there's only one other that's that could be on the table, and that's the Davis County, a 96 proof offering out of Lux Row, sourced from MGP. But we'll see why that sort of did not make sense to throw on the table for this evening. Because first up, we got Penelope. So this is a brand that's known for sourcing their bourbon out of MGP. They're using a 4-grain mash bill, and this is their first Architect Series bourbon, which they're referring to as Blueprints. And this is billed number 1, a French oak stave finished bourbon. Then we have Maker's 46. This is the gold standard for French oak finished bourbon. So they take 10 oak staves, finish their wheated bourbon into Maker's 46, and this is a cask strength offering. And then moving over to Buffalo Trace's Old Charter Oak, French oak finish, because they have like 4 releases that they offer out of the Old Charter Oak brand line. And today, obviously, we're going to be using French oak in that blind flight fight. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these a little bit more in detail. Before I do, I want to talk about why these were selected, and then a little bit about French oak. But like I said, these are sort of the premium offerings. So what else could be on the table? You have the Davis County 96 proof offering out of Lux Row. It's really the same thing in the sense that this is a MGP Penelope, MGP sourced bourbon, also a 4-grain mash bill. Now they use something a little bit different. It's called Oak Scan technology, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But really fairly similar. This is sort of trending right now, as it were. This is something that may allegedly be more premium end of that line, but we'll find out. And then Maker's 46, obviously there's a non-cask strength version of that. You can find on the shelf every day of the week. But what I wanted to showcase is sort of what you're seeing here. You got a 4-grain with a high rye kind of mixed in there. You got a wheat, solely wheat, and you got a low rye. So this is using mash bill number 1, which is allegedly less than 10% or less rye mash bill. And then it's aged 12 years. So you got age, low rye. You got a wheated bourbon, cask strength. And you got a 4-grain mash bill, about 4 to 5 years of age. And this cask strength, by the way, we got 104 proof on the Penelope. We got 109.6 on this cask strength. It's kind of a low cask strength, to be honest. And then the French oak from Old Charter Oak is at 92 proof. Just want to make sure I didn't, misquote. So yeah, that's a little bit about that. But what is French oak? So French oak is oak, right? That is from France. Their history goes way back, and we can talk, a little bit about the Trançais forest that is a lot of which the French oak is pulled from. Over 3 centuries ago, that's where those forests, those trees were planted for providing shipbuilders materials for the French Navy. You go back another couple of millennia, you get that very same land being cultivated by the ancient Romans. So that land has been used for a long time. Now, Old Charter Oak sort of alludes that they pull from there, but doesn't really confirm that. However, what is kind of neat, and we'll go into that a little bit later too, but that line extends to Mongolian oak, and it includes Canadian oak, and includes some other, but it also includes oak that will eventually showcase an offering that has oak that's been aged like 3 centuries. That's 300 years for those that need that spelled out for them. That's a long time. And so why is that important? Because oak lends, as we know in the bourbon community, it lends somewhere around 2/3 or like 60 to 80%, depending on who you ask, of what happens to the distillate becoming what we know and love as bourbon. So to be bourbon, you have to be aged in, by TTB ruling, I just confirmed 2 seconds ago in the regulation, that it has to be a new oak container, right? So amongst the other 51% corn and all that good stuff. New oak container. It doesn't say American oak, although that's what's usually used. So these two start in American oak and then add in oak staves. This one solely uses a whole French oak barrel, right? But most coopers will tell you that what matters most when selecting oaks for barrels is the grain. Did the tree grow slow and steady, resulting in a tighter grain? or were conditions just right for rapid growth and therefore a wider grain pattern. Common practice at cooperage is to classify the wood by grain, but some go as far as labeling cuts by provenance. Those coopers believe that where the tree grows has an influence on the characteristics of the barrel and ultimately the flavor of the spirit it gets. So that goes into the French oak bit. So when you look at Buffalo Trace, also has another experimental line where they're experimenting a single oak project, a little bit with where the oak comes from. This goes that the French oak piece goes a little bit further in the sense that we're specifying there's a French oak or oak pulled from France component to what the end product is going to be. I'm a big fan of Maker's 46 regulars, so I hope I'm not biased when it comes to the blind fight we're going to do tonight. But that's the whole fun of a blind fight. Kind of tongue twister there. So we're going to go ahead and start with the unicorn on the table. So some might say it is or it is not, but you're not going to see, unfortunately, this sitting on pretty much any shelf. It's supposed to be like an annual release, but it's not just a French oak release. This comes out periodically amongst the other offerings. So I'll read to you the write-up I put together for Buffalo Trace's Old Charter Oak brand, which goes to say, quote, explores how the origin, age, species, and preparation of white oaks influenced the making of great American whiskey, end quote. The brand dates back to 1874 when Adam and Ben Chappies created the bourbon, naming it in honor of the charter oak tree, a famous symbol of American independence and free spirit. It was famously used to hide the charter papers from England that gave the colony of Connecticut rights to elect its own rulers when those rights were threatened by new powers on the throne. In 1856, it fell in a storm. The current expressions in this brand include bourbon finished in Chinkapin. I probably messed that up, so no laughing. Mongolian oak, Canadian oak, and French oak, with others planned for release, including bourbon aged in barrels made from oaks that are centuries old. We talked about that. This expression uses Buffalo Trace's Mash Bill 1, the same low rye recipe used to make Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare. According to Buffalo Trace, this bourbon was aged 12 years at Buffalo Trace, quote, drawing its characters from barrels made of French oak, an oak that has long been used for aging the world's finest wine. The tighter grain of French oak impart more subtle flavors and a silkier texture than its American counterpart. According to a 2021 November press release, this is the third release of French oak and sixth release overall for the brand. Master distiller Harlan Wheatley says, quote, we first experimented with French oak barrels in 1995. We released our first experiment with French oak in 2006, and we were so pleased with the results, we bought more barrels from France and put more bourbon up to age. Over time, this has become one of our favorite bourbons, and it's always a treat when we've got some that are ready to bottle. It's power-packed with sweetness, sourced from the vanilla, caramel, and wood sugars, while balanced with the French oak tannins. With the French oak barrels, we are now exploring how the flavors are delivered at different levels. It speaks to the regionality of wood and how it can impact the flavor of the bourbon whiskey, end quote. So that's pretty much it for the Old Charter Oak offering you see before you tonight. I will now go and talk about the next in line, which is, in fact, the Maker's 46 cask strength. So Maker's Mark has been around since the late 1950s when Bill Samuel Sr. accidentally destroyed his family's 170-year-old bourbon recipe. So, yeah, that's a true story. With the loss of his family's legacy, he set out to recreate and improve upon the flavors that he had grown up with and to tame the sharp bite that some bourbon tend to trade on. When the son of Bill and Margie took over as president in 1975, his father's only words of advice to Bill Samuels Jr. were, quote, don't screw up the whiskey. So it's kind of interesting because the whole Maker's Mark recipe came out of basically experimenting with, the yeast mash bills and making bread as a way to sample how that bourbon might end up tasting. And they landed on Maker's 46. So after they destroyed that recipe, that's essentially how they got to yes. Samuels and Maker's Mark master distiller Kevin Smith worked together to develop a new expression with the original Maker's Mark flavor profile in mind, but intensified in full body without any bitterness. To achieve the desired results, Smith suggested giving mature Maker's Mark a different finish. After their experiments reached a seemingly dead end, they turned to Brad Boswell, president of Independent Stave Company. Those guys are essentially who make almost all, probably 80-90% of all the barrels that are used by, bourbon companies. There are notable exceptions like Jack Daniels, like Old Forester, for example, but mostly independent stave company is the people that are making those barrels. Boswell invented a groundbreaking technique in which he lightly seared French oak staves on both sides. The name comes from the profile number Boswell assigned to the special seared staves, 46. From Maker's Mark website, quote, the innovative wood stave finishing process starts with fully matured Maker's Mark at cask strength. We then insert 10 seared virgin French oak staves into the barrel and finish it for 9 weeks in our limestone cellar. Samuels, who is also an ex-rocket scientist, was quoted saying, quote, creating Maker's Mark 46 was trickier than working on the damn Polaris missile. I gotta take him at his word, but that sounds pretty complicated. In 2020, to celebrate their 10th anniversary of Maker's 46, they launched a cask strength bottling. This one, right here. Rob Samuels, managing director of Maker's Mark, said in a letter to his fans, quote, this limited release, previously only available in small quantities at our National Historic Landmark Distillery, represents the purest expression of the bold taste that has made our original wood finishing series bourbon so beloved. It's as close as you can get to sampling Maker's 46 right out of the barrel in our limestone cellar. Sounds great. Can't wait to try it again. So since then, Maker's Mark has gotten into the wood finishing series game. They are up to now 4 with 2 more planned releases in 2022, although we've yet to see them hit the market. More to follow. Maybe you'll see a video of that in the future. And then last but certainly not least, we have the newcomer, Penelope Architect French Oak Finished Bourbon. So Penelope Bourbon was founded in 2018 in New Jersey and is the brainchild of entrepreneurs and lifelong friends Mike Palladini and Danny Pelosi. The name is a nod to Mike's daughter, Penelope. Penelope sources stock from MGP's distillery in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and is a blend of 3 different bourbon mash bills that are aged separately before being dumped, blended, and barreled. The bourbon mash bills are MGP's 99% corn bourbon, their 21% rye bourbon, and their 45% wheat bourbon, all respectively aged between 3 to 4 years and blended for a final mash bill of 75% corn, 15% wheat, 7% rye, and 3% malted barley. Yes, that means this is a 4-grain bourbon. In 2022, Penelope introduced the Architect Series named in honor of the art of whiskey blending and launched their first, quote, blueprint with, quote, Build 1, a French oak finished bourbon. Using their 4-grain blend of 3 different bourbon mash bills, the company then finished the whiskey with 2 different styles of French oak staves, selected in collaboration with Tonnerie Ahadou. So, no laughing, that's French, and I did my best. Out of France, a market leader in oak barrel manufacturing and innovation. Together, the companies use their, quote, oak scan process to analyze each individual stave using near-infrared spectrometry. The process is typically used by barrel coopers to sort staves and assemble barrels with specific polyphenolic content, which directly impacts the influence that the wood has on the whiskey's flavor. Each stave entering into production is scanned and marked with a letter. This letter indicates which category of tannic potential it belongs to. This is meant to help coopers sort the staves more easily and make barrels with specific polyphenolic indexes. The indexes estimates the content of wood, the polyphenolic content of wood between 0 and 100. This Architect French Oak release is aged 4 to 5 years and again bottled at 104 proof. However, they don't really talk about how that oak scan process is used. So they talk about that content being 0 to 100, but don't say that they isolate all 10s or, the assumption for me, at least on the surface level, would be that they're looking for the lowest tannic level possible. But that's unconfirmed data. I'll take that for whatever that's worth. So that's pretty much all I have for you tonight in terms of history and background. So I'll put a marker later on where you can tune into the important part, which we're about to do just now. We're going to do the tasting, going left to right. I don't know which is which, but whether the idea of which isn't necessarily to dig out the specific tasting notes, but rather to slide these forward and back and decide who is triumphant, who's getting, bronze, and who's going to be going home just shy of a winner. So, start with glass 1. This one's pretty dark. So before I do real quick, I do got to say that, if we're treating, as a metaphor, all bourbons as automobiles per se, then, these aren't like car, truck, van. These are all cars, right? They're all French oaks. However, these are definitely different. So this is like a sports car. This is like, maybe your Honda Civic, automobile, a family trusted thing. and maybe this is, the dune buggy car, right? That's not a direct comparison to what's inside these bottles, just as a metaphor to say that, yes, they're all cars, they're all French oak, but really you've got 12 years, you got a lot, some decent age and low rye. Then you've got a wheat, and cask strength. So not a great comparison. And then you've got, this 4-grain crazy mash bill, 4 to 5 years, which can't go against the first one. So really they wouldn't normally be in a fight against one another. But there's really limited options when it comes to the French oak finishings. I could have thrown Davis County on the table as well, but like I said, it's kind of too close to this. And the idea of which is to explore, French oaks and to see really just, I guess, essentially who's better. So sorry, a little pause X there, but going back to glass one. Man, that's a pretty decent nose on that one. Some oak, but it's actually kind of on the sweeter end of the spectrum. But who cares? Let's talk about what it tastes like. So it's medium to full bodied, but like I said, I'm probably going to pick out what ones are which. I'm thinking pretty early on, this one's got to be the old Charter Oak. That oak and that age on the oak, more specifically, is pretty noticeable up front. It's on the medium to full body kind of side. The sweetness on the nose does pick up, but it kind of translates more to like a light brown sugar. I was going to say creme brulee. Maybe that's a bit forceful, but maybe that works. So I'm picking up a familiar note that I've had before, because I've had this before. And I actually get like a peach tea to it. And it's pretty prominent. So I'm going to go ahead and probably just call this is the old Charter Oak. But so far it's number one because I haven't had any others. So I'm going to remove my bias as best I can and pretend I don't know that. But yeah, it's a lot of oak. Maybe a bit of honey on the back end, but like a florally kind of note. Not sweet at all. More the oaky side with like sweet flavors. Does that make sense? But going into glass number two. Actually, this is actually definitely sweeter. Remember, when you nose these things, you want to go, right and left nostril and go back and forth, because throughout the day those can change back and forth, which is going to, receive better noses. But you actually receive, flavors, and the same through your palate all the way down to, technically, your throat. Some claim that down to like, inside your body, you can actually continue to taste, but I don't know about that. I kind of stops for me right about here. It's very creamy, pretty flavorful, almost like a kind of a milk chocolate kind of deal going on. It's not super strong in terms of proof, so before I sip the other one, I'd have to compare, because really, this is cask strength, man, 109.6, probably one of the lowest cask strengths I know of, against the Penelope, 104. So I really might not be able to tell which is the cask strength here, but I'm hoping the 4 grains comes out to me. But I like the oak better than what I tasted on glass 2. I'm a big oak guy. I know some people are like strong love it or hate it, camps when it comes to oak flavors. This doesn't taste like matured oak you find on like a 15, 18, 20 plus year, like that mature, earthy, damp kind of note. But it has that strong, still very robust, oak flavor. So, but I like it. I like that stuff. So that, for me, this is going to be number 1 so far. And between glass 2 and glass 3, really the color is pretty close. They probably age very similar too. Huh. I thought I'd be able to pick these two out from one another. I actually can't. This one tastes like it has a little bit more going on. Glass 3. Like a chocolate. Again, they both have like a chocolate note to it. Shoot. Well, I think I know I like glass 1 the best. I think that's an easy win. 2 and 3 need to dance with one another a few more times here. This is gonna take a second. Let me go ahead and rinse and repeat. This one's got some cherry on the back end, and it does have that punch of a cask strength. I don't like playing the guessing game. You shouldn't do that when you play blind flight because it really takes the whole point of it away. But do you? And right now, doing me means I'm gonna play the guessing game. I'm gonna go on a limb to this Maker's 46. This that cask strength kind of punch. And I don't really care what happens because if this is Old Charter Oak, my bias is I kind of want that to win. I'm gonna be on front, but I don't really care who wins. Out of here, I don't really care who wins at all, to be honest. But I'd like to see Old Charter Oak win if that's what happens. But between these two, cool. I like an upset. I like an underdog. Maker's 46 is one of my first really big finished bourbon, things that I've gotten into. And so it's got a special place for me. So I'd like to see it maybe win, but I don't really care. So let's go to 3. I gotta be honest. I like 3 is a little bit more mellow. And a little more balanced, but it has like some pops of different flavors going on, like maybe an orange milk chocolate, perhaps. They both have wheat. I can tell they both have wheat on them. I don't know if I can pick out the rye right now, but this one has a bit more spice kick on the end. But I like this. I'm gonna go. Glass 1 is the winner. Coming in second is gonna be glass 3, and then coming in third is gonna be glass number 2, número dos. That's Spanish for number 2. So we'll go ahead and flip these cards now, and glass number 3 is Maker's 46 cask strength, y'all. Well, when you drink as much as I do, Penelope Architect is number 2, which leaves, of course, the one I wanted to take it home with, Charter Oak, as number 1. So, Charter Oak is not an upset. I think, if you pulled a lot of, bourbon enthusiasts, people who drink, and sample enough, bourbons, they probably would come to the same conclusion. I guess you could see maybe the Maker's 46 camp, coming out, swinging a little bit. But I think generally you're going to see Charter Oak take it home. Maker's 46 wasn't bad, even though it came in third. By a long shot, it's not bad. These are all fine offerings. What is kind of the upset, though, is this newcomer, Penelope Architect. It's got some nuanced flavors, and, maybe it's a marketing gimmick or not. I don't know, but that oak scan technology, getting that low tannic stuff with 4 to 5 years, what you see in oak, usually that young, is that little tinge on the back, which is sort of that tannic notes coming through for being, aged that young. Perhaps it could be a number of other things as well. But typically a bourbon aged, where that is, not my favorite. But maybe there's some truth to that advertising or technology, and they're finding these low tannic staves to go into that barrel. And in this case, it achieves sort of I wouldn't say well balanced ending, but okay balanced. So I'm trying to think a little bit more, about what I'm tasting here. And now that I've got it before me, it does start off a little like creamy corn. Your sweet familiar, vanillas and caramel notes. Sure. Yep. But there's actually a note on here that kind of reminds of like a toasted bourbon. It's kind of weird, but maybe they do toast. Their regular Penelope 4-grain, what they do is they use a number 4 heavy char, alligator char, barrel with number 2 char level heads. So maybe that's it. So maybe that's part of it. And there's some depth on the back end, like some cola. Just a sprinkle of like black licorice, very subtle. Again, not like the flavor, like, I know there's a lot of people out there not fans of black licorice, but that's going to just add another little layer of depth that bring it down from that sweet initial beginning. Then it goes to like this toasted oak, familiarity, the French oak stuff, hopefully, which it does. And then going to like some heavy depth, which is from that, cola, from a little leather, from a little black licorice. But it's very subtle. And then it kind of has, again, another subtle note here, a little bit of black pepper. I'm pleasantly surprised because this is one that is definitely trending in the bourbon community right now. A lot of people are after it. Unfortunately, because of that, you don't see it on the shelf a lot. But yeah, you're routinely seeing this go for probably, I think MSRP is somewhere around $60, but you see it about, I don't know, 80 to $150 on the secondary, somewhere on there. Makes 46 cash strength. You'll see it occasionally on the shelf, every once in a while. It's kind of a rarity, to be honest. I can't recall what it retails for. I'm gonna presume somewhere around $100. I don't remember. I don't want to misquote. This one, unfortunately, its MSRP is only like $100 something or whatever, $150 or something like that. But it retails on the secondary for like $400. I've seen it upwards to $1,800 to $1,000. Crazy talk. Look, it's not worth that. This is a good bourbon. This is the best of the French Oak series, in my opinion. But it's still nowhere near worth that. Do not do it. Great bourbon, 12-year age statement there. Great Buffalo Trace, which love or hate, whatever camp you're in, but don't pay $1,000 for it. But it's still a great bourbon. It's worth probably somewhat of a markup from the MSRP, but do what you will with that. And then moving back over to this Maker's 46 real quick. That milk chocolate is kind of coming through more on the nose as it opens up. Much like it shared with the Penelope here. Maybe that's the wheat and the French oak mixing together. I don't know. But that's the only similarity these two share, really. It's like a toasted vanilla. There's a toasted bit note on there, too. Again, your classic bourbon vanillas and caramels are definitely in there. This one's got a little bit more of that like creme brulee I found on the Charter Oak a little bit. Just a touch. It's a little spicy, more cinnamon, which, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised. So this is more cinnamony on the back end, but it does share that a couple similarities with the Penelope Architect. These two are more similar than Glass One, for sure. Yeah, and the Charter Oak, I think I nailed that right on the head, but man, I gotta finish strong here, y'all. Yeah, the balance on it, man, it's a 92 proof, right? 92 is what I said? Yeah, 92 proof. That's evident. Oh, man, it's just better. It's just better. The age statement does come through. I've said that like 1,000 times now. But it's just everything else beyond that, just kind of subtle complexities that are just integrated in there. It's really nicely balanced. It's just better. It's the best of these three. I think I knew that from like sip one. Well, if you've tried other French oak bourbons, let me know where you think they might rack and stack. If you had these three, let me know what you feel in terms of where my opinion turned out. I'd love to hear back from you all. But until then, y'all, cheers and thanks for tuning in.